Who had Germany losing their record of having never lost on pens at the World Cup to Paraguay on their bingo card?
Germany are leaving a World Cup far too early again.
For decades, football had this famous saying:
64 games, 171 goals, 20 odd men, kicked a ball around for 120 minutes, and at the end, do I really need to tell you, the Germans won?
Well, not anymore. Germany will be frustrated over that disallowed goal, but they showed zero creativity throughout 120 minutes. They never played well enough to avoid penalties in the first place.
You all thought, Germany going into a tournament, they could be favourites. And I said, no, I've watched them often enough. And today we saw that again. We need that grit. We need that desire to really be hard to beat.
Julian Nagelsmann made one of his boldest decisions of the tournament by dropping Jamal Musiala and switching to a 4-4-2 with Dennis Undav, hoping it would create more chances while making the team harder to counter. It achieved neither.
So, okay, you didn't start Undav on the last game, group stage, but you start Undav against Paraguay, but you don't start Musiala. I think he's going to have to answer some question, the coach here, about what decision he has taken there.
The attack lost even more creativity.
Germany had, I think, 79 or 78% of possession, but it's about what you do with the ball when you have it.
And the same defensive mistakes that had followed them throughout the tournament showed up again. Paraguay's goal was a perfect example. It wasn't some moment of brilliance that broke Germany down. It came from simple attacking moves that exposed poor positioning and individual errors once again. Who would have imagined this after the opening round of games, where Germany spanked Curacao 7-1 and Paraguay were beaten 4-1 in their opening match? Well, many German fans will argue that the signs for this loss were obvious. Even in the win against Curacao, they looked vulnerable at the back. In the next game, they barely squeezed out the 3 points against Ivory Coast. They were down 1-0 for large parts of the game, and it took a Dennis Undav masterclass, along with Adingra forgetting how to shoot the ball, to win the match. Then, of course, they lost the last group game to Ecuador. Some people brushed off the loss, saying it was a meaningless game for the Germans, but the warning signs were there. Now the questions begin. Why the hell did Leroy Sané keep starting despite struggling all tournament? Should Kimmich have been moved back into midfield?
Lots of talk in Germany, legends like Lahm and Matthäus talking about the fact that Kimmich needs to be playing in midfield as opposed to at right back. It seemed that Nagelsmann got it wrong here in this tournament.
Yes, definitely.
Why was a 40-year-old Neuer still in goal? These debates are just beginning, because for a country whose identity has always been built on winning the biggest moments, losing a World Cup on penalties to a country where they were ranked so much higher than is disgraceful. And I think the worst part for German fans is seeing their team struggle again in the World Cup, because this isn't new. The Germans have now failed to reach the round of 16 for the third successive time in a row.
We tried to educate players passing the ball well, which worked really well. 2014, we got our World Cup. But after that, we kept on passing it nicely, but we forgot to fight very hard against the ball. So we have only one way, and it doesn't work anymore.
Ever since Philipp Lahm lifted the World Cup trophy in Rio de Janeiro, this team hasn't come anywhere near the same heights. The German Football Association had spent years building towards that moment. They invested heavily in youth development, coaching, sports science, and creating a strong team culture. Germany became one of the smartest and most organized football nations in the world. But ironically, winning the World Cup also became the start of their downfall. After 2014, a dangerous sense of complacency slowly crept into the national team. There was this growing belief that Germany would always figure things out eventually, simply because they were Germany. That mentality became a huge problem. While other countries rapidly evolved tactically, Germany stayed stuck in old habits for too long. The coaching staff kept trusting the same core players who had delivered success in Brazil, even as some of them declined physically or struggled badly at club level. The hunger that made Germany so dangerous in 2014 was gone, and the cracks of their downfall began to show as they entered the 2018 World Cup. Even before the tournament started, the warning signs were everywhere. Germany looked slow and disorganized during the warm-up matches, including a 2-1 loss to Austria and a very shaky 2-1 win over Saudi Arabia. But inside the camp, there was still this confidence that everything would click once the real tournament began. That confidence turned into disaster. In the opening match against Mexico, Germany's tactical setup completely collapsed. Joachim Löw used an extremely high defensive line, while the team dominated possession very slowly and predictably. Mexico destroyed them in transition. They cooked them like some quesadillas. Germany looked vulnerable the entire match and lost 1-0 in one of the biggest shocks of the tournament. Then came a dramatic win against Sweden. Germany survived thanks to an unbelievable last-minute free kick from Toni Kroos, and for a moment, people thought maybe the old German mentality had returned. But honestly, it was mostly an illusion. The deeper tactical problems were still there, and they all got exposed versus South Korea. Germany completely fell apart again. South Korea anticipated Germany's slow passing patterns perfectly and shut down their attacks across the pitch. The statistics from the tournament were honestly shocking. Germany had 67 shots during the group stage, but converted only 4% of them. I mean, can you guys even try to hit the target? It was the worst conversion rate of any team at the World Cup. At the same time, Löw stayed loyal to struggling veterans like Mesut Ozil, Thomas Müller, and Julian Draxler, while controversially leaving Leroy Sané out of the squad entirely, despite Sané coming off an incredible season in England. The funny thing is that Sané is doing the same thing now, just in reverse with Nagelsmann. He was selected for the national team despite many German fans feeling that there were better alternatives out there, since this guy, he hasn't been at the top level for a pretty long time now. Then came the final humiliation. South Korea scored twice in stoppage time and sent Germany crashing out of the World Cup group stage for the first time in the country's history. For a football nation built on consistency and going far in tournaments, this felt unthinkable. After the disaster of the 2018 World Cup, most people expected Germany to reset. In almost any other major football nation, a defending champion crashing out on the group stage would have immediately ended the manager's reign, but the German Football Association stayed loyal to Joachim Löw and gave him another chance to rebuild the team. That decision ended up dragging out the decline even further. Löw tried refreshing the squad, but the entire project felt confused and directionless. Germany never really developed a clear identity again after 2018. The football lacked intensity, balance, and confidence, while tactical experiments constantly created more problems than solutions. And even before Euro 2020 started, things were already looking ugly. Germany suffered one humiliating result after another, including a shocking 6-0 destruction against Spain and an embarrassing home defeat to North Macedonia during World Cup qualifying. By the time Euro 2020 finally arrived in 2021 after the pandemic delay, the atmosphere around the team felt strange. Löw had already announced he would leave after the tournament, so Germany entered the competition feeling like a team stuck between eras with no real long-term direction. And tactically, the situation only became more frustrating. Löw insisted on using a rigid 3-4-3 system that never really suited the players available. One of Germany's best midfielders, Joshua Kimmich, was pushed out wide as a wingback instead of controlling matches centrally where he was more effective. Meanwhile, Thomas Müller was used in a role that looked awkward and uncomfortable, even for Müller, who is a player who naturally looks awkward and uncomfortable, while the back three constantly looked exposed defensively. Germany fell behind in every single match in the tournament. I mean, they went down quicker than your local hooker. Even the famous 4-2 win against Portugal felt chaotic rather than convincing. Then came the round of 16 against England at Wembley. For many German fans, that match felt like a painful end of an era. Germany played slow, predictable football with almost no creativity or urgency. England looked comfortable the entire time and eventually won 2-0 without much trouble. And just like that, Joachim Löw's 15-year reign came to an end. When Hansi Flick became the German manager, the excitement was massive. After everything that went wrong under Joachim Löw, Flick felt like the perfect person to modernize the national team again. He had just won every major trophy possible with Bayern, including a historic sextuple, playing aggressive, high-pressing football that overwhelmed opponents both physically and tactically. People expected him to bring that same energy back to Germany. At first, things looked promising. Germany cruised through qualification, scored goals freely, and seemed to finally have a clear identity again. But underneath the surface, many of the same defensive problems from previous tournaments were still there. They just never truly got fixed. Then came the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. The entire tournament quickly became a mess, both on and off the pitch. Before Germany even kicked the ball, the squad was already surrounded by political controversy connected to Qatar's human rights issue. The players' famous pre-match team photo, where they covered their mouths in protest, instantly became one of the biggest talking points of the entire tournament. Back home in Germany, the reactions became extremely divided. Some supported the gesture, while others felt the national team was becoming distracted from football itself. Either way, it created massive pressure around a squad that already looked emotionally fragile and lacked strong leadership personalities. Then the football started, and somehow the opening match against Japan felt almost identical to the disaster against Mexico 4 years earlier. Germany dominated possession, controlled large stretches of the game, and took a 1-0 lead, but they wasted chance after chance after chance. The finishing was poor, the game management was weak, and defensively they still looked vulnerable vulnerable anytime the opponent attacked quickly. Then everything collapsed late in the match. Germany completely lost defensive organization during the final 15 minutes. Subs destabilized their structure, and Japan punished them with 2 quick goals to secure another shocking comeback victory. It was deja vu all over again. A hard-fought 1-1 draw against Spain kept Germany alive, and they eventually beat Costa Rica 4-2 in a chaotic final group game. But it wasn't enough, because Spain had already destroyed Costa Rica 7-0 earlier in that tournament. Germany lost the goal difference battle and crashed out in the group stage for the 2nd consecutive World Cup. For Germany, that was unthinkable historically, and besides one player, the entire squad looked broken. Jamal Musiala was basically the only consistently exciting part of that entire tournament. The young midfielder completed 34 dribbles across the group stage and constantly looked like the one player capable of creating something dangerous out of nothing. But around him, Germany looked slow, disorganized, vulnerable on transitions, and mentally weak during key moments. For a country once famous for control, composure, and tournament mentality, this was yet another fall from grace. When Julian Nagelsmann became Germany manager in late 2023, many people saw him as the man who could finally drag German football into a new era. He was young, modern, tactically creative, and completely different from the older generation of German coaches. After years of slow, predictable football, Nagelsmann immediately tried bringing more speed, intensity, flexibility, and attacking freedom back to the national team. And for a while, it actually felt like things were finally changing. During the spring of 2024, Germany produced some really encouraging performances, including impressive wins against France and the Netherlands. For the first time in years, German fans felt genuinely excited watching their national team again. There was a growing feeling that Germany might finally be recovering from the disasters of 2018 and 2022. Then came Euro 2024 on home soil. The atmosphere around the country was incredible. Germany played with much more energy than in previous tournaments. The fans reconnected emotionally with the team, and Nagelsmann managed to restore a sense of pride around the national side. Germany's quarterfinal exit against Spain brought back some familiar frustrations, but the performances had improved. In fact, had Germany not been robbed by the ref, with him not calling an obvious handball on Cucurella, they could have gone further. Still, considering the mood around the national team before the tournament, this was progress. The problem was that after the Euros, the optimism around Nagelsmann started fading quickly. Instead of building stability after Euro 2024, Germany entered another period of tactical experimentation, confusing lineup decisions, and player management drama that split opinion across the country. Some fans still believe Nagelsmann is the right man for the future because of his modern ideas and willingness to evolve German football stylistically. Others feel Germany is slowly drifting back into the same chaos that damaged previous generations. Too many tactical changes, unclear leadership, and a team that still lacks a true identity during the biggest moments. One of the biggest controversies of Julian Nagelsmann's time as Germany manager exploded just days before the 2026 World Cup squad was announced, and somehow it involved the one position Germany usually never worries about, and that's goalkeeper. After Manuel Neuer officially retired from international football following Euro 2024, the plan seemed very clear. Marc-Andre ter Stegen was finally supposed to become Germany's long-term number one after spending years stuck behind Neuer. But then everything fell apart. Ter Stegen got injured, underwent back surgery, and eventually got pushed out of Barca. Thank God, by the way, bro had been Ter statue for a few seasons now. Suddenly, Germany had a major problem heading into the World Cup. That's where Oliver Baumann stepped in. At 35 years old, the Hoffenheim goalkeeper became one of Germany's most reliable players during qualification. Although from what I've researched, there's still split opinion about this guy as well. Here's the important part. Nagelsmann reportedly reassured Baumann directly during the March 2026 international break that he would remain Germany's starting goalkeeper at the World Cup, even if Neuer returned in some backup role. But then came the shock. On May 19th, 2026, only 2 days before the official squad announcement, Nagelsmann reportedly called Baumann personally and informed him that Neuer was coming out of international retirement and would immediately become Germany's starting goalkeeper again. The backlash was massive. A lot of people inside German football were furious, not just because of the decision itself, but because of how it was handled. Former goalie Jens Lehmann publicly called it a complete breach of trust and warned that other players might now question whether they can believe anything that the national team coach tells them. Even German legend Lothar Matthäus, who understood why Germany might still trust Neuer in a big tournament, admitted the situation had been managed terribly. Fans were even more brutal. A lot of supporters believe Neuer is simply not the same goalie anymore. While he remains one of the greatest keepers keepers ever, his recent performances for Bayern have been inconsistent and filled with mistakes. Look at his huge Champions League mistake against Real Madrid. He had another bad performance against Greece back in a friendly. Even Neuer's distribution, once considered revolutionary, has become a major criticism recently, with many supporters arguing that he now gives the ball away far too often, trying risky passes. That's why German fans believe Nagelsmann simply panicked. Instead of fully trusting Baumann or giving younger goalkeepers a chance, he ran back to the familiar safety net of Neuer because of fear and pressure heading into the World Cup. And for many people, that decision symbolizes the bigger problem surrounding modern Germany. Even while trying to build a new era, the national team still seems emotionally attached to the past. The goalkeeper controversy only added fuel to a growing criticism surrounding Julian Nagelsmann. Many fans now believe he struggles badly with man management. The Dennis Undav situation became another example of this. After Undav came off the bench and scored a huge late winner in a friendly against Ghana, most people expected Nagelsmann to praise his striker's impact. Instead, the manager publicly criticized Undav's fitness and basically ruled him out of contention for a starting spot at the World Cup, no matter how many goals he was scoring at club level. Because keep in mind, Undav has played very well for Stuttgart. It completely caught fans off guard. Rather than building confidence around an informed player, Nagelsmann seemed to publicly undermine him moments after he had just won Germany the match. Undav clearly wasn't happy either, and responded by saying that if he kept scoring, eventually the coach would have no choice but to play him. Even though Nagelsmann later apologized and admitted his comments were stupid, the damage had already been done. For many supporters, it became another example of a manager who sometimes overcomplicates situations and creates unnecessary tension around the squad. Because remember, a similar thing happened at Euro 2024 involving Mats Hummels and Leon Goretzka. Nagelsmann made the huge decision to completely leave both players out of the squad. Now, dropping experienced veterans is part of football. That alone wasn't necessarily the problem, but the timing and context made the situation explode. Hummels had just led Borussia Dortmund to the Champions League final and was playing some of the best football of his career again. Many German fans genuinely believed he deserved to be a part of the squad, so when he was excluded, the backlash was immediate. Hummels openly admitted how painful the decision was, and publicly argued that he still believed he was one of Germany's best defenders. Meanwhile, Goretzka's omission also created frustration, especially among supporters who felt Germany lacked experienced leadership and physicality in midfield. But once again, the bigger issue was Nagelsmann's handling of the situation publicly. During press conferences, he openly spoke about how difficult and emotionally uncomfortable those conversations were for him, which only increased the perception that he struggles dealing with big personalities and high-pressure squad management. That's why the debate around Nagelsmann has become so divided.